I never imagined that 70 years of life could echo so loudly in a silent dining room. The kind of silence that feels like it's breathing on your neck, like it's alive, like it knows something you don't want to admit. That evening, I sat at the head of my long mahogany table, the one Leon bought decades ago on a day when he thought he could make up for all his sins with something expensive. Back then, I used to polish it until it shined like promise. But on my 70th birthday, it reflected nothing but empty chairs and the flicker of candles losing their courage. The china plates sat untouched in front of every seat. I had laid them out like old memories, fragile, decorated, and full of stories no one seemed to remember but me. I must have spent half the morning choosing which ones to use. The white set with the gold trimming felt right. Darius always said they looked too fancy, but I liked them because they reminded me of who I used to be before everyone's needs swallowed me whole. The silverware was polished, the glasses were shining, and the food? Lord, the food was still warm when I first sat down. Collard greens simmered in a pot that filled my house with a smell that reminded me of my mother's kitchen. Fried chicken rested on a platter lined with paper towels the way I always did it to keep it crispy. Macaroni and cheese, sweet potato casserole, cornbread, and the peach cobbler cooling on the counter. The one dessert no child of mine ever said no to. But the food sat there like a ghost of a celebration that should have been. Everything was ready. Everything except them. I kept glancing at the clock, convincing myself being late was just normal, that they were busy, important, successful, doing the kinds of things that people with full calendars and full lives did. I reminded myself I was lucky to have raised children who had climbed so high. I tried to ignore the voice whispering, "They learn to fly by stepping on your back." Then, "Sorry, Mom, a last-minute meeting. I'll make it up to you this weekend. Love you." From Darius, my oldest, my first heartbeat outside my body, the one who used to follow me around like a shadow with big dreams and even bigger needs. He was always the one I thought would check on me, even without a holiday or obligation attached to it. But somewhere along the way, he became the kind of man who belonged more to conference rooms and clients than to the woman who raised him. I swallowed the disappointment and told myself not to take it personally. One child missing didn't ruin an entire evening. The others would come. But then the second message flashed across my phone. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Brianna's sick, and Elijah has a school project due. I feel terrible, but tonight won't work." From Clarence, my middle child. Sensitive, soft-hearted Clarence, who used to cry whenever I cried, even if he didn't understand why. The one who always said he'd take care of me when I got old, back when he didn't know that adulthood came with excuses disguised as obligations. Brianna wasn't sick. She had posted a picture earlier that day, her smiling at some cafe, coffee in hand, hair done, makeup flawless. Elijah had finished that project 2 days ago. Clarence was just avoiding the guilt of sitting across from me and explaining why he rarely called anymore. I tried to breathe, but the room felt smaller with each message. Then the third arrived. "Mom, I can't make it. Something came up. Happy birthday, though." No, I love you. No explanation. No promise to make it up. Brianna, my baby girl. The daughter I thought would understand woman to woman what it felt like to carry the world on your back. But life had hardened her the same way it hardened me, except instead of becoming softer and more patient, she became cold, efficient, emotionally distant in a way that felt almost surgical. She didn't mean to be cruel, but intentions didn't warm empty chairs. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe so I can share more stories with you. When the final message came in, I didn't even open it. The vibration itself told me enough. I simply set the phone down on the table, folded my hands in my lap, and listened to my own heartbeat echo across the room like a distant drum. For a moment, I felt myself shrinking, like my soul folded inward, curling into itself like a dried leaf. The candles flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls as if mocking me. I sat there staring at those empty chairs, each one holding a memory of who I used to be. The mother who cooked 3 meals a day, the keeper of everyone's secrets, the woman who made herself small so others could feel big. I poured myself a glass of sweet tea, took one sip, and felt tears burning the back of my throat. I didn't cry, not yet, but I felt the heaviness gather there like a storm cloud forming just behind my ribs. 70 years old, and I felt like a child again, waiting for someone to notice me. And in that moment, I thought of Leon. Not because I missed him. God, no. But because I realized he had taught our children something unintentionally. That a woman's sacrifices were just a given. Something expected. Something ordinary. He had taught them that love didn't need maintenance or gratitude. That a mother was a resource, not a person. I thought about the night I left him. 32 years ago, when I finally walked away after finding lipstick on his shirt that wasn't mine. After cleaning up his messes, literal and emotional, too many times to count. After watching him come home drunk, slurring lies, stumbling through the hallway while I pretended not to hear because the children were sleeping and the noise of a failing marriage was the one thing I didn't want them to wake up to. I left because I realized survival meant choosing myself. But that night at my empty birthday table, I realized something even harder. Choosing yourself isn't something you do once. It's something you must do again and again, especially when the people you love forget you are human. The first tear slipped down my cheek before I even noticed. I wiped it quickly, almost angrily, and whispered to myself, "Marjorie, you've been waiting for everyone else to show up for 70 years. When are you going to show up for yourself?" The question felt like a key turning inside me. I stood up slowly, letting the wood of the chair scrape softly against the floor. The sound felt final, like a door closing. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a plate, and served myself dinner. Not a small portion, not a just enough, but a full plate, the way I used to serve Leon after he came home demanding to be taken care of. Then I sat back down at the head of the table, just me, and ate my food in silence. And for the first time in a long time, I tasted it. Really tasted it. Every spice, every bit of flavor. It felt like nourishment, not obligation. By the time I finished eating, something inside me had shifted. Not dramatically, not like a thunder strike. More like a candle lighting in a dark room, small but enough to see my way. When I cleaned up the dishes, I didn't cry again. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt awake. Later, as I got ready for bed, I ran my fingers over the soft fabric of my nightgown. I stared into the mirror and saw a woman who had survived more than she ever received credit for. My hair had grayed, my skin had softened, and my body had grown slower. But my spirit still had fire. It still had something left to give, but not in the old ways. Not in ways that drained me to fill others. I turned off the lights, slid beneath my blankets, and let out a long breath. The kind of breath that releases years of being taken for granted. Then my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. I was tired of disappointment wearing different masks, but something told me to look. When I reached for my phone and saw the name on the screen, my breath caught in my throat. Benjamin Carter. A name I hadn't spoken aloud in decades. A name tied to soft memories and quiet laughter. A name I thought I had buried in the same place I buried the girl I used to be. The message was simple. Happy birthday, Marjorie. I never forgot this day. You've always been someone special to me. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My heart fluttered like it remembered something my mind had forgotten. Benjamin. Gentle, kind, steady Benjamin, the man who once made me feel seen at a time when Leon made me feel invisible. The man Leon hated for that exact reason, even though Benjamin never crossed a line. He simply gave me something Leon couldn't. Respect. Seeing his name felt like someone opening a window in a room that had been sealed shut for years. I read the message twice, then a third time, letting the warmth of it settle into the cracks I didn't know were still broken. I wrote back before I could talk myself out of it. Thank you, Benjamin. It's been a long time. Seconds later, his reply came. It has, but some people are unforgettable. And just like that, something long dormant, something soft, something hopeful stirred inside me. I had no idea then how much that message would change my life. I only knew one thing. For the first time in a very long time, I no longer felt alone. Benjamin's face stayed with me long after I drove away from the cafe. I could still see the way his eyes softened when he looked at me, as if time had shaped us both into something sturdier, something wiser, something that could finally meet in the middle without fear. I could feel the warmth of his hand lingering in mine where he had helped me over the cracked sidewalk, Not possessive, not demanding, just steady. That simple steadiness felt like a luxury I had forgotten I was allowed to have. When I walked through my front door, the house felt different, not because anything in it had changed, but because I had. My living room still held the same furniture I had bought years ago with tax returns and careful saving. My hallway still held family portraits, Darius in his first suit, Clarence smiling with no front teeth, Brianna standing stiffly during her kindergarten photo with a bow that was too big for her head. But instead of seeing these things as evidence of what I had poured out, I saw them as artifacts of a woman who had survived, endured, and kept going even when no one seemed to notice. I stood in front of the mirror in the foyer and stared at myself for a long moment. The green dress fell just right. My lipstick had faded, but the remnants of confidence lingered in the slight tilt of my chin. I looked like someone who had stepped out of her past and into something new, something unfamiliar, something possible. I hung up my purse and walked into the kitchen. The dining table sat exactly as I had left it after cleaning up for my lonely birthday dinner. For the first time, I did not feel embarrassed by it. I felt detached, almost like I was looking at a photograph of a moment that no longer held power over me. The empty seats were not a judgment anymore. They were simply chairs, not verdicts. I poured myself a glass of water and carried it to the porch. The air smelled like wet earth and jasmine, a scent that always reminded me of my mother humming while she watered her plants. I sat down in my favorite wicker chair and let the smell wash over me. I breathed in slowly, feeling the tension unravel itself thread by thread. I kept thinking about the words Benjamin had said at the cafe. It is not too late. No one had ever said that to me before. People had told me I was strong, that I was dependable, that I was needed, but never that I still had life left to live for myself. For so many years, I felt like my purpose existed only in relation to other people's needs. Cooking for my children, caring for Leon's moods, volunteering at the school, watching grandchildren when asked, it all became a kind of quiet servitude dressed up as family duty. I did it because I loved them, and I still loved them, but I had forgotten how to exist outside of service. Now suddenly, someone saw me without asking for anything back. That night, I settled into bed with a book I barely opened. My mind could not stop replaying the way Benjamin listened, not just hearing my words, but absorbing them, weighing them, responding with care. There was something almost dangerous about that kind of attention, something that made a part of me feel young again, in a way that felt almost foolish. But I refused to shame myself for it. Not anymore. Before I fell asleep, I looked at my phone one more time, half expecting a message from one of my children. But my screen was blank. No apologies, no follow-ups, no sudden awareness of how my birthday must have felt. In the past, that silence would have cut me like a knife. Now, it felt like clarity. The next morning, the sun woke me early. I got dressed in a soft cotton blouse and loose pants, clothes chosen not for anyone else, but simply because they felt good on my skin. I made myself breakfast, eggs, toast, sausage, and sat outside on the porch swing. The birds were loud that morning, their chatter rising above the hum of distant traffic. I let the sounds wrap around me, grounding me in a world that felt bigger than my disappointments. My phone buzzed as I washed dishes. Benjamin, good morning. I hope today meets you gently. I smiled in spite of myself. It was such a tender phrase, meets you gently. I could not remember the last time anyone had hoped softness for me. Good morning, I typed back. It's already a better day than yesterday. He responded with a story about the man who ran the church pantry, a lively fellow who always misplaced his glasses, but somehow never lost track of the pantry keys. I found myself laughing as I read it, my hand flying to my mouth in surprise. The laugh came from somewhere deep inside me, a place that had been dormant for far too long. Are you free this Sunday? He asked. It would mean a lot to me if you came with me. No pressure if not. I thought about it. Church had always been complicated for me. It was where I had found community, but also where I had learned to hide my bruises, emotional and otherwise. It was where people brought casseroles to your door when your husband lost his job, but whispered behind your back when he drank too much. Still, there was something about the way Benjamin talked about his church, quietly, without fanfare, without self-righteousness, that made me feel like it could be a new experience, not a return to old wounds. "I'll come," I wrote. He answered with a smiley face and the words, "I'm glad." I spent the rest of the day cleaning, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to breathe easier. I opened windows, swept floors, organized drawers. I found old letters from Leon tucked inside a book, the kind he used to write when he sobered up enough to feel guilty. Apologies written in ink that never translated into action. I threw them away without ceremony. I found a photo of myself from my late 20s, standing in front of my first house. My smile was wide, hopeful. I traced my fingers over the younger me and whispered, "You tried so hard. You really did." Then I placed the photo on my dresser instead of hiding it in a shoebox. The next day, my daughter Brianna finally called. I saw her name flash across the screen, and for a moment I debated letting it ring. But old habits die slowly. "Hello, Brianna," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Hey, Mom." Her tone was clipped, like she was calling between other obligations. "You didn't respond to my text." "I needed a moment," I replied simply. "Oh." She paused, thrown off balance. "Well, I'm sorry about missing your dinner. Things have been a lot lately." "Things are always a lot," I wanted to say, and somehow they only get less a lot when you need something. But I swallowed the bitterness. Growth wasn't about winning petty battles. It was about choosing myself, even in conversation. "I understand," I said, "but Brianna, you all missed something important to me." Silence. "Then, we'll make it up to you." In the past, I would have latched onto that promise like a life vest. This time, I simply replied, "We'll see." I heard her inhale sharply, surprised by my firmness. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm better than before," I answered truthfully. When I hung up, I realized with a strange mix of sorrow and pride that my children had gotten used to a version of me who bent, yielded, and forgave without asking for anything in return. Now, they were speaking to a woman rediscovering her value, and it unsettled them. Good. Sunday arrived with the scent of warm air and blooming azaleas. I dressed in a navy dress that felt dignified but comfortable. When I met Benjamin outside the church, he looked exactly the same as at the cafe, steady, warm, with that quiet confidence that made me feel like I could be my whole self without apology. "You look lovely," he said, offering his arm. I took it. Inside, I felt nervous at first, but the congregation was small and welcoming. People greeted me with genuine smiles, not the forced politeness I remembered from certain church ladies who always seemed to be collecting gossip like spare change. Benjamin introduced me to everyone with pride in his voice, as though having me beside him meant something. After service, he invited me to help with the food pantry. I hesitated, a part of me afraid that volunteering would lead me back into old patterns of giving until I was empty. But when I walked into the storage room and saw shelves lined with canned goods and boxes of produce, I felt something soften. This wasn't obligation. It was community. A young mother came in with a little girl clinging to her leg. She apologized for being late, explaining that her bus had broken down. The pantry coordinator waved off her apology and asked how she was doing. As the mother talked, I noticed the exhaustion etched into her face, the kind of tiredness I once knew well. Without thinking, I knelt down to the little girl's height and asked if she liked peaches. Her eyes lit up. I handed her a small can and she hugged it like a treasure. Something inside me cracked open then, not a wound, but a doorway. I realized how much of my life had been spent giving love to people who expected it, and how beautiful it felt to give it to someone who received it with gratitude. By the end of the afternoon, my feet were sore, but my heart felt wide open. When Benjamin walked me to my car, he smiled gently. "You fit here," he said. I surprised myself by agreeing. "Maybe I do." He took my hand again, just briefly, just enough to send a quiet warmth through me, and said, "Marjorie, I'm glad you came today." I looked up at him, the sunlight catching the edges of his graying hair. "I'm glad too," I said. More than I expected. As I drove home, the sky stretched wide and open above me, the clouds drifting like they had all the time in the world. And somewhere in the space between who I used to be and who I was becoming, a new truth settled into place. I wasn't done. I wasn't finished. And for the first time in a long while, I felt alive. Benjamin and I settled into a quiet rhythm during the weeks that followed, one that didn't feel rushed or intrusive. Every few days, he sent me a message asking how I was doing or sharing something from his volunteer work. Sometimes he'd send a photo of a sunset he thought I'd like, or a song he heard on the radio that made him think of the way we used to sit outside after Bible study talking about everything under the sun. And sometimes he would simply check in, thinking. It was astonishing, really, how healing such simple words could be. Not honeyed, not dramatic, not manipulative, just sincere. I had spent most of my life swimming through people's needs until my own dissolved in the water. Having someone ask me, regularly, genuinely, how I was doing felt like learning a new language, a tender one. But even as things with Benjamin blossomed quietly, something else began brewing inside me. Something I hadn't expected. A clarity, a boldness, a long overdue awakening. For most of my adult life, I had operated on autopilot, cooking when asked, showing up when required, listening to tears and tantrums from my grown children as if they were still toddlers missing their bedtime. But after that empty birthday dinner, and after seeing a different kind of care reflected in Benjamin's eyes, something shifted. I started thinking about my children, about the people they had become, and the role I had played, unintentionally, in raising them to assume I had no boundaries. It wasn't malice on their part. It was habit. Teach someone you're always available, and they will treat your availability as part of the furniture. One Wednesday afternoon, while sorting laundry, I paused with a folded towel in my hands. For a moment, I just stood there staring at the neatly creased fabric. Then it hit me, hard and clear. My children didn't know me. Not really. They knew the version of me that had existed solely for their comfort and convenience. I wanted more. I deserved more. And I was no longer afraid to admit it, even to myself. The phone rang then, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Clarence. His name lit up my screen with a familiar mix of hope and exhaustion. When I answered, his voice sounded cheerful, rehearsed. "Hey, Mom. I was thinking of coming by this weekend. Brianna has a thing with her friends, and I figured we could have lunch." In the past, I would have said yes immediately, already planning the menu in my head. But after everything, his sudden availability didn't feel like a thoughtful gesture. It felt like guilt wearing a disguise. "I'm volunteering Sunday," I said before I could second-guess myself. He paused, confused. "Volunteering? Since when do you volunteer?" "Since recently," I replied calmly. "I go to the church in Mount Pleasant. They run a pantry and community program." Another pause. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you haven't asked how I'm doing in a long time, Clarence." Silence. Heavy, startled, uncomfortable silence. Then, I guess that's true." I heard something crack in his voice. Not guilt exactly, but recognition. A mirror held up without accusation, simply reflecting what had been ignored. "We can have lunch next week," I continued gently. "Yeah," he murmured. "Next week." After we hung up, I stood there in the laundry room, the weight of my words settling into me like warm sand. I had spoken softly, but I had spoken truthfully. For once, I hadn't tried to cushion the truth in sweetness or excuses. I felt stronger, taller. That weekend at the church pantry, I felt even more certain of my transformation. The work wasn't glamorous, stacking canned goods, organizing shelves, greeting volunteers, but it felt grounding. People who came through the doors weren't looking at what I could give them emotionally or financially. They were simply grateful for food, for conversation, for someone who didn't treat them like burdens. One older man with a weathered baseball cap told me, "You remind me of my sister." She used to say, "Compassion is a muscle you gotta exercise or it shrinks." I smiled. "Then I guess I'm lifting weights today." He laughed, and something loosened inside me. There was beauty in being among people who understood hardship without hiding behind pride. Afterward, Benjamin and I sat on a bench outside the church, sipping cold sweet tea he'd bought from a street vendor. The sunlight hit his face just right, warming the lines around his eyes. "You handled that mother and her little girl beautifully today," he said, glancing at me from the corner of his eye. "You have a way of making people feel safe." "I used to think that was a weakness," I murmured. He shook his head slowly. "No, it's a gift. You just weren't handing it to the right people." His words settled into me like a blessing. For years, I had believed my kindness was something other people were entitled to, something I owed. But sitting there beside him, I realized something deep, something almost painful in its truth. Kindness still lived in me, but it didn't have to be free for anyone to take. As the days passed, I found myself reclaiming small pieces of joy I had forgotten. I played old gospel and blues records while cooking for myself. I walked through my neighborhood in the early mornings, watching dew gather on the grass like tiny pearls. I organized the boxes in my attic, letting go of things I once clung to only because they proved I had existed. It was during one of those attic cleanouts that I found my wedding album. I sat on the floor, dust motes swirling in the light, and stared at photographs of a woman who no longer felt like me. My dress was beautiful, lace sleeves, modest neckline, but my eyes told the real story. There was hope there, yes, but also a quiet fear. The kind of fear that hopes for love but suspects disappointment is waiting around the corner. I closed the album gently. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I simply felt closure. Then came the unexpected shift with my daughter. One afternoon, Brianna called again. Her voice sounded more hesitant this time. "Mom, can we talk?" "Of course," she exhaled. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we missed your birthday. I know a text wasn't enough. I guess I didn't realize I was taking you for granted." The admission surprised me. Brianna wasn't the type to admit fault easily. She inherited her father's pride, his tendency to armor his vulnerabilities with sharpness. "I appreciate you saying that," I said softly. "I want to do better," she added. "But it feels like you're changing, like you're slipping away from us." Her voice carried something fragile beneath the polished exterior, a fear she didn't know how to name. "I'm not slipping away," I assured her. "I'm just finding myself again. And I want a relationship with my children, but not at the cost of disappearing." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "I didn't know you felt that way." "I didn't either," I admitted. "Not until recently." There was a small, vulnerable hum in her throat, almost like a child remembering how to reach for her mother's hand. Then she said, "Can I see you soon?" Not out of guilt. "I just want to see you." My heart softened. Yes, I would like that. After the call ended, I stood at the kitchen counter and let the emotion wash through me. Not heavy, not painful, but cleansing, like rain rinsing the dust off old windows. That evening, Benjamin called. Hearing his voice after such an emotional day was like stepping into warm light. "How are you?" he asked. "Truly." "I'm growing," I said simply. He chuckled softly. "Growing at 70, now that's something." "Maybe I'm late to the party," I said, "but at least I showed up." He grew quiet, then said something I wasn't expecting. "I think you're becoming the woman you were always meant to be." The words hit me with a force I hadn't anticipated. It was the kind of affirmation that felt like it reached back through decades and pulled up the roots of every overlooked version of me. And instead of shrinking from it, I allowed myself to take it in. We talked for another hour about life, about the strange paths lost carved into our futures, about what it meant to choose joy after years of settling for survival. Not once did he make me feel rushed, indebted, or expected to entertain him. He simply held space for me to exist. At night, when I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a quiet anticipation. Not dread of being needed, not fear of being forgotten, but anticipation of becoming someone new. As weeks turned into a month, my world transformed in small but meaningful ways. I started attending church more regularly, not out of obligation or tradition, but because I liked how I felt afterward. Purposeful, connected, seen. I spent time with Benjamin outside of church, sometimes at cafes, sometimes walking by the river, sometimes sitting in his backyard sipping iced tea while the sun dipped behind the trees. We talked about everything, our childhoods, our marriages, our regrets, our hopes. There was a softness in those conversations, a mutual understanding built from parallel chapters of disappointment and perseverance. But even as things deepened between us, he never pushed. He never rushed. He let me set the pace, and that alone made me love him a little more each day, though I never said the word aloud. One afternoon, I invited him to my house for dinner. It was the first time I had invited a man into my home in decades. I cooked lightly, nothing fancy, just baked chicken, rice, and green beans. When he arrived with a small bouquet of lilies, I felt my heart dance in a shy, girlish way. "You didn't have to bring flowers," I said, my voice warmer than I intended. "I know," he replied, handing them to me. "That's why I did." The meal was simple but perfect. We ate slowly, talked about life's strange detours, laughed about old stories, and shared silences that didn't feel empty. When the evening ended, he didn't try to lean in for a kiss. Instead, he took my hand gently and pressed it against his cheek. "Thank you for letting me into your world," he whispered. I felt tears rise, not of sadness, but of recognition. "Thank you for knocking on the door." After he left, I stood in my living room surrounded by the remnants of a simple dinner and felt something powerful settle into my bones. I was not lonely anymore, not because of Benjamin, but because I had finally made room for myself. Still, the next phase of my awakening wasn't about love. It was about boundaries long overdue. The following week, Darius called unexpectedly. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. I braced myself. "What's on your mind?" "I heard from Brianna that you've been distant, busy, doing your own thing." I inhaled slowly. "I have been taking care of myself." He sounded exasperated. "But why now? Why all of a sudden?" "Because I realized I'm allowed to," I replied, my tone steady. He let out a frustrated sigh. "Mom, we need you." "No," I said softly, but with a strength that surprised us both. "You want me, but you don't treat me like someone you value. That's gonna change." Silence. Thick, dense, charged. Then he whispered, almost like a child again, "Are you angry at us?" "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm awake." Those words hung in the air like truth finally given permission to breathe. And as I spoke them, I knew the balance of my life had shifted for good. I was no longer the woman waiting at an empty table. I was the woman building a life that others had to earn the right to sit at. I woke up the morning after that difficult call with Darius feeling heavier than usual, not physically, but emotionally, as if the air around me had thickened overnight. My son's voice replayed in my ears, not because of the frustration in it, but because of the fear I heard underneath. A fear I had never given myself the time or permission to understand. He was afraid life was changing without his consent. He was afraid I was changing without his control. He was afraid the mother who had made herself perpetually available had learned how to close a door. But fear, like love, was a teacher. And after 70 years, I was finally learning how to listen to myself first. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee warming my palms and listened to the quiet. Not the lonely quiet that had tormented me on my birthday, but a peaceful quiet, a settled quiet. The kind that makes room for reflection, not regret. The sun drifted through the blinds in golden streaks, gently spilling across the table, and I found myself thinking about how much my life had shifted in such a short time. For years, I had believed transformation required some grand event, some dramatic upheaval, but in truth, it was built on small choices. The choice to answer Benjamin's message, the choice to say no to my children when guilt came wrapped in sweet words, the choice to volunteer at the pantry, the choice to see myself not as an afterthought, but as a person with a life still worth shaping. My phone vibrated on the table, breaking my thoughts. I lifted it carefully, already sensing it might be another ripple from the emotional undercurrent I stirred up. It was a message from Brianna. "Mom, can we talk today, face to face?" I stared at the words for a long moment, not because I doubted her sincerity, but because the girl she once was, the girl who demanded perfection and shunned vulnerability, now sounded almost tender. I had never heard my daughter ask for a conversation in such a soft way. "Yes," I replied. "This afternoon works." I could almost feel the shift in her relief through the screen. I spent the morning cleaning lightly, not the frantic scrubbing I used to do when company was coming, but simple tidying. I placed fresh flowers in a vase because they made me smile, not because I wanted to impress anyone. I put on a soft cardigan that smelled faintly of lavender and brushed my hair in slow, thoughtful strokes. By the time Brianna knocked on the door, I was ready. She stood on the porch, dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored pants, her hair straightened to perfection like always. But her eyes were softer than I had seen in years. Hesitant, searching. "Hi, Mom," she said. "Come in, baby." When she stepped inside, she looked around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. Really seeing it. Maybe she was. Children often view their parents' homes as set pieces in their own stories, rather than spaces that hold their parents' private lives. We sat on the couch. She crossed her legs and folded her hands like she was about to defend a thesis. But then she sighed. A sigh that carried years of unsaid things. "Mom," she began, "I owe you an apology. A real one." My chest tightened. I didn't interrupt. "I was selfish," she continued, and blind. When you told me you cooked a whole dinner by yourself and sat alone, I didn't stop to think about what that meant. I just told myself it wasn't that big a deal because birthdays come every year. But it was a big deal. It was your 70th. Her voice cracked. Your 70th, Mom. And I wasn't there. I nodded slowly. Yes, you weren't. The honesty startled her, but I refused to cushion the truth anymore. She swallowed. I know we've gotten used to you always being okay, always holding everything together, but I think we've been taking advantage of that. We just assumed you didn't need anything from us, that you didn't need support. Hearing that word, support, felt like a soft touch on a bruise. I do need support, I said gently. I'm human. I've always been human. She blinked rapidly, trying to keep her emotions neat and contained. I think I forgot that, she whispered. I reached out and placed my hand over hers. For a moment, she tensed, an instinct she inherited from Leon, the instinct to armor herself when emotions rose too close to the surface. But then she relaxed, her hand melting into mine. Brianna, I said softly, I love you. That hasn't changed, but I'm changing. I'm learning how to take care of myself. That means I won't always be available at the exact moment you want me to be. It doesn't mean I'm leaving you. It just means I'm finally showing up for myself. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Silent, trembling tears that looked like they'd been waiting years to fall. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't, I said. But you will have to share me with my own life this time. She let out a shaky laugh. That's fair. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she asked, Is it true you're seeing someone? I almost laughed at how delicately she tried to phrase it. I'm spending time with someone, I replied. Someone kind. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. Do I know him? No, I said. And you probably won't right away. This is something I need to build slowly. She nodded. Okay, I can respect that. And for the first time in years, I believe she meant it. When she left that afternoon, she hugged me, tightly, earnestly, which was something she hadn't done in a long while. I held her for a moment longer than usual, feeling a quiet pride settle into me. Not because she apologized, but because I stood up for myself in a way that allowed both of us to grow. After she drove off, I stood on the porch for a while, breathing in the warm air. The world felt open, alive, full of possibility. That evening, I told Benjamin about the conversation. I'm proud of you, he said. That took courage. It took 70 years, I answered. And he laughed softly. Sometimes the longest journeys are the ones back to ourselves. We planned to take a walk by the water the next day. The weather had been warm and clear, the kind of days Charleston was known for. Blue sky, soft breeze, the smell of salt lingering on the wind. When we met by the harbor, he greeted me with the same gentle smile that had slowly become a familiar comfort. You look peaceful today, he said. I feel peaceful. We walked along the water in slow, easy steps. Seagulls swooped overhead, their cries echoing against the rippling waves. Boats drifted by lazily, their sails catching the sun. Families laughed nearby. Couples held hands. And for the first time in decades, I felt like I belonged to the world around me. Not as someone's mother or ex-wife, but simply as Marjorie. I had a rough conversation with my son, I told him. But I think things are changing. Change is uncomfortable, he said, but necessary. We sat on a bench overlooking the harbor. Boats bobbed gently in the water. I could feel the sun warming my shoulders. And for a moment, I closed my eyes and let myself rest in the sensation. Benjamin, I said quietly, do you ever think about the life you could have lived if things had happened differently? He nodded. All the time. But I try not to stare at the past too long. It doesn't change. We do. I opened my eyes and turned to him. I think I'm changing into someone I like. His smile deepened. I like her too. His words settled into me gently, like petals landing on water. Not heavy, not overwhelming, just soft and sure. We continued our walk, talking about everything from the best places to eat in the city to the books we loved as young adults. He told me stories about his late wife, stories filled with gratitude, not grief, and he didn't hide his widowhood like a wound. He held it like a part of his story, not the whole story. And you? He asked. What do you want now, for the next chapter? The question startled me, not because it was intrusive, but because no one had asked me that in years. My wants had always been molded around other people's needs. I want to feel alive, I said. I want joy, connection, purpose, and I want to stop apologizing for needing those things. That's a beautiful answer, he said. What about you? He thought for a moment. I want companionship, not dependency. I want someone to walk beside, not behind. And I think that person might be you. My heart skipped. Not a frantic skip, not an anxious skip, but a warm, steady flutter. And what if I'm not ready? I asked softly. Then I'll walk at your pace, he replied. We stopped beneath a large oak tree whose branches stretched wide like welcoming arms. Its roots twisted deep into the earth, steady and strong. I felt something symbolic in that moment, like I was standing beneath a living metaphor for the woman I was becoming. Benjamin, I said, my voice almost a whisper, I think there's a part of me that's been waiting for you, even before I realized it. He stepped a little closer. Not too close, just enough to let me feel the warmth of his presence. I've been waiting too, he said, but waiting without expectation, waiting with hope. I smiled. Hope is a good place to meet. Then let's meet there. He took my hand, slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted, but I didn't. His hand was warm, steady, familiar in a way that surprised me. We stood there for a while, watching the boats move across the water. For the first time in my life, I wasn't loving from emptiness. I wasn't giving from guilt. I wasn't clinging to someone to fill a void. I was choosing from abundance, an abundance I had created by finally choosing myself. Weeks later, my son Clarence called. Mom, I want to see you, he said. Really see you. Can we have that lunch you mentioned? Yes, I replied. We can. And we did. That lunch ended with him hugging me, his eyes wet, and telling me he hadn't realized how much he expected me to be invincible. I don't want you to feel alone again, he said. I don't, I replied simply. I have myself, and I have people who care, including you, but you have to show me, not just say it. He nodded, I will. Even Darius softened over time. He showed up one Saturday morning with groceries and flowers, lilies, the same kind Benjamin had brought me that first night. He stood in my doorway looking more like the boy I raised than the man he had become in the corporate world. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. I didn't realize what I was doing, or not doing. I know, I told him. But now you see it. That's what matters. He hugged me, burying his face in my shoulder, like he used to when thunder scared him as a child. And for the first time in a long time, our embrace felt mutual, not one-sided, not obligatory, not rushed. Weeks turned to months, and the change in my family was slow but undeniable. They visited more, they listened more, they asked more, not out of guilt but out of genuine desire. And Benjamin, he remained my steady companion. Sometimes we walked by the river. Sometimes we sat on my porch drinking lemonade and sharing quiet moments that felt richer than any words. Sometimes we volunteered side by side, handing out food or packing boxes with the ease of partners not just in service, but in life. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky shimmered with soft orange light, he said something that made everything inside me settle into place. Marjorie, I don't know what the future looks like, but I know I want to walk toward it with you, however far you're willing to go. I looked at him, really looked, and felt no fear, no hesitation, just warmth. Then let's walk, I said, and so we did. At 70 years old, I learned that love wasn't something you earned by breaking yourself into pieces. It wasn't something you begged for, or waited for, or chased like a child running after approval. Love, real love, arrived when you stood whole, not hollow. When you knew your worth, when you stopped shrinking. In choosing myself, I made room for others to choose me too. And that changed everything. What would you have done in my place? Tell me where you're listening from. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to support more stories like this one, you can always send a super thanks. With heartfelt greetings. Until next time.